Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. Thomas Marshall stood in his home office, staring at the framed wedding photo on his desk. 12 years of marriage captured in a single moment. Him in a black tuxedo. Victoria in her flowing white dress, both beaming at the camera. His fingers traced the edge of the silver frame as he remembered how happy they had been that day. The same frame now felt as if it held a stranger's memories. The sound of Victoria's hushed laughter drifted from downstairs, pulling him from his reverie. Another late-night phone call. She assumed he was asleep, just as she had for months. Thomas glanced at his watch and moved silently to his office door, leaving it slightly ajar so he could hear her words clearly. Victoria's practiced whisper filled the quiet house. "I miss you too." "No, he's asleep. I know, just a little longer." Thomas clenched his jaw but forced himself to listen. Each word was further evidence of what he had known for months. He opened his phone and added an entry to his detailed log. October 15. Phone call from living room. Whispers, laughter, duration 23 minutes. The entry joined hundreds of others. A digital record of betrayal spanning nearly 100 days. Every call, every date, every location was meticulously documented. Thomas was nothing if not thorough. He walked to the bathroom and flipped on the light. The harsh fluorescent bulbs revealed the toll of sleepless nights. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and a day's stubble marked his normally clean-shaven face. At 42, he had always taken pride in his appearance, but lately, the stress was evident. The sound of Victoria moving downstairs made him pause. She was probably checking to ensure he was still asleep. Thomas turned on the faucet and let water run into the sink. After a moment, he heard her footsteps retreat to the living room, followed by muffled conversation. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to clear his head. In the mirror, his brown eyes hardened with resolve. He was no longer the trusting man who had stood beside Victoria at the altar 12 years ago. He had been naive, unaware of how easily love could turn to betrayal. A floorboard creaked as he stepped into the hallway. Victoria's voice cut off mid-sentence. Thomas made his footsteps heavy as he walked toward their bedroom, giving her time to end the call. Once he slipped under the covers, the house fell silent except for the hum of the heating system. Soon, Victoria crept into their bedroom. Thomas kept his breathing steady, feigning sleep as she moved around. The familiar scent of her Chanel perfume, the same one he had given her last Christmas, wafted by as she passed his side. "Good night, honey," she whispered, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Thomas continued his measured breathing, letting his feigned snores fill the silence. The mattress dipped as Victoria settled on her side, maintaining the careful distance that had become their new normal. He waited until her breathing evened out before opening his eyes and staring at the ceiling in darkness. Morning arrived with the harsh buzz of his alarm. Thomas went through his routine with mechanical precision. He showered, shaved, and dressed for work as if armored by normalcy perfected over the past months. Victoria was already in the kitchen when he came downstairs, dressed in a new blouse he did not recognize. She stood at the counter, preparing coffee with the expensive machine they had bought together last year. Her phone buzzed against the granite countertop, and she snatched it up with eagerness. Thomas asked in a carefully neutral tone while reaching for a coffee mug. Victoria startled slightly, as if she had forgotten he was there. "Oh, just work stuff," she said. "You know how Rachel gets with deadlines." Rachel, her supervisor at the marketing firm, was yet another excuse in her growing collection. Thomas knew exactly who the message was from, the same person she had spoken with the previous night. The contact had been relabeled 2 months ago, he thought. He poured his coffee with a splash of cream. "Will you be home for dinner tonight?" The message read. Victoria's fingers tightened around her phone. "Actually, I might have to work late. This campaign is really demanding right now," she replied. On a Friday, Thomas stirred his coffee slowly, watching her reflection in the kitchen window. "You know how it is in marketing," she said with a practiced laugh. The same laugh she used at company parties. "Everything's always urgent. Don't wait up if I'm not back by dinner." Thomas nodded as he sipped his coffee. "Actually, I might be home early today around 5, she added. Her mug trembled slightly before she set it down. "Oh, that's nice. But like I said, I'll probably be late." Thomas watched her hurried movements. Her actions were just a touch too rushed to be casual. "Have a good day, Victoria," he said. She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. For a moment, guilt flickered across her face before her polished smile returned. "You too, honey." As soon as the door closed, Thomas opened his tracking app on his phone. He had installed it months ago, when the signs of her unfaithfulness became undeniable. The blue dot showing Victoria's location began moving, not toward her office downtown, but in the opposite direction. Thomas finished his coffee and walked to his home office, double-checking his preparations. He opened his laptop and reviewed his calendar. A meeting with his lawyer was scheduled, and before that he had a final check-in with a private investigator. A message soon arrived. "Heading to usual location. Photos incoming." Moments later, several images appeared on his screen. Victoria's car was parked outside a familiar apartment complex, and she was seen entering the building. In the final photo, she greeted a man at the door, Daniel Cooper, 35, a financial advisor and divorcee. Daniel had been seeing Victoria behind Thomas's back for the past few months. Thomas saved the photos to his encrypted drive and headed to work. His office at Marshall & Associates Consulting was quiet this early in the morning. As senior partner, he occupied the corner office with a view of the city skyline, though lately the view had lost its appeal. Everything seemed dimmer now, tainted by the knowledge of Victoria's betrayal. Then his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Marshall, Miss Chun is here to see you," said Sarah. Thomas straightened his tie as his lawyer, Rebecca Chun, entered the office, a sharply dressed woman in her 50s known as one of the best divorce attorneys. Rebecca sat across from his desk and spread out several documents. "I have reviewed everything one final time. The house sale is complete. All assets have been transferred to your sole account, and the utilities will be disconnected as scheduled. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed with this?" Thomas asked as he reached for the papers without hesitation. "More certain than I have ever been, Rebecca. You have everything documented." He showed her the latest photos from the investigator along with his detailed log of Victoria's activities. 3 months of documentation, including phone records, credit card statements, photographs, and more. Rebecca nodded in approval. "This is very thorough, Thomas. Most clients let emotion cloud their judgment, but you have handled this remarkably well." "I had to," he replied. "When I suspected something was wrong, I knew I could not confront her without proof." He signed the final document with a steady hand. "I have a plan now." Rebecca gathered the papers and tucked them into her portfolio. "The new owners can take possession as soon as you give the word." She continued, "The moving company is on standby, and the divorce papers are ready to be served. Are you sure about the timing?" Thomas leaned back, his decision unwavering. "Yes, everything happens today." Victoria believed she was in control, but she had no idea what was coming. Rebecca cautioned him, "Remember to stay calm when you make your move. The law is on your side." Thomas then spent hours finalizing every detail. He confirmed arrangements with the moving company, ensuring they understood that timing was crucial. He double-checked that all utilities would be disconnected by Monday and even called the security company to change the locks. Later, Thomas packed up the last of his office essentials. He had already moved most of his important documents and personal items to his new apartment over the past week. Victoria had not noticed the gradual disappearance of his belongings. Too preoccupied with her own deceptions, the drive home felt surreal, like watching someone else navigate familiar streets. Thomas parked a block away, out of sight of the house. Daniel's red sports car sat boldly in the driveway. Thomas checked his watch and walked slowly up the front path, each step measured and deliberate. The house looked the same as that morning, but it no longer felt like home. It was just a stage for the final act of their marriage. Laughter drifted through the front door. Victoria's high-pitched giggle mingled with Daniel's deeper voice. Thomas took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and inserted his key into the lock. The door opened smoothly, and the laughter stopped abruptly. Thomas stepped into the living room and took in the scene. Victoria and Daniel sat on the couch where they had spent countless evenings watching movies. Wine glasses adorned the coffee table, and Victoria's new blouse was half unbuttoned. Victoria jumped up, her face flushing red. "You're home early." Clearly. Thomas's voice remained steady, betraying none of his inner turmoil. Daniel stood slowly, a smirk playing on his face. "Well, isn't this an interesting situation?" Thomas looked between them, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. Victoria's shock transformed into defiance. "I suppose we need to have a conversation about this," she said. "Like civilized people," Daniel added with a widening smirk, "though the situation speaks for itself." Thomas nodded slowly. "It certainly does. Look, Thomas," Victoria said in a patronizing tone, "these things happen in marriages. People change. They grow apart." Daniel interjected, "We have something special, something real, something you and Victoria never had." Daniel wrapped an arm around her waist. "Let's be honest, you're not exactly the most exciting person. Victoria needs more than routine and spreadsheets." Victoria leaned into Daniel's embrace, her wedding ring catching the light. "It's better this way, Thomas. You should go. We can figure out the details later. But for now, just leave." Thomas said quietly, "You're asking me to leave my own home." Daniel laughed. "Come on, man. Don't make this pathetic. Accept that you've lost and walk away with whatever dignity you have left." Thomas looked around the living room one last time, at the photos chronicling their life together. Each image now felt like a mockery. "You're right," he said finally. "I should go." Victoria blinked, surprised by his calm acquiescence. "Yes, you should take what you need for tonight, and we'll sort everything out later." Thomas walked to the hall closet and retrieved a pre-packed overnight bag. "I'll take this for now. You can have the house," Victoria remarked, unable to hide the hint of triumph in her voice. "Very generous," Daniel added as he reached for a wine bottle. "No need for unnecessary drama." Thomas paused at the door and looked back one last time. Victoria had turned away, focused on pouring more wine. Daniel gave him a mock salute, victory written on his face. "Goodbye, Victoria," Thomas said as he stepped outside. He closed the door quietly behind him and walked to his car, listening to the renewed laughter drifting through the evening air. They had no idea what was coming. In his mind, he replayed his meeting with the real estate agent 3 weeks earlier, recalling the final papers he had signed. Thomas started his car. The moving company would arrive soon. He had given them explicit instructions to wait before beginning to clear the house. Everything had been documented, cataloged, and legally transferred. A message from Rebecca confirmed that divorce papers were ready for service. Everything was proceeding as planned. Thomas allowed himself a small smile as he drove toward his new apartment. Let Victoria and Daniel have their celebration. Their laughter would not last long. Sometimes the best outcome was simply letting actions catch up with people. The sun was setting as he pulled into his new apartment complex, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. A new day was ending, and with it his old life. Tomorrow would bring chaos for Victoria and Daniel, but for Thomas it meant freedom. In the old house, a crystal champagne flute caught the last rays of sunlight through the windows, sending prisms dancing across Victoria's face as she raised her glass. Her lipstick left a perfect crimson mark on the rim as she took another sip. Her laughter echoed in the house that would soon no longer be hers. To new beginnings, and to Thomas, who made this so much easier than I expected, she declared in a slightly slurred voice. Daniel lounged on the leather couch, his suit jacket draped over the armrest. He lifted his glass with a self-satisfied smirk. I have to admit, I'm almost disappointed. I had a whole speech prepared about how he needed to face reality, but he just folded. That's Thomas for you. Victoria kicked off her expensive heels, letting them fall carelessly onto the Persian rug Thomas had brought back from a business trip. Always avoiding confrontation, always taking the safe route, she stretched out her legs and rested her feet in Daniel's lap. Daniel began massaging her feet expertly. However, did you survive 12 years of such excitement? He asked. Victoria leaned back and closed her eyes. I think I was just comfortable. Safe. Thomas was predictable, she murmured softly. He was like a well-programmed machine. Waking at dawn, working until late, watching the news, and retiring at a set time every day. Now, Daniel's hand moved higher, tracing gentle patterns on her ankle. Victoria's eyes opened, a mischievous glint replacing their cool blue. Now we can really start living. This house is just the beginning. We'll redecorate everything. I'm thinking modern, minimalist. All those old antiques will have to go. Daniel reached for the champagne bottle. Your husband's practical taste in wine certainly needs an upgrade. Victoria wrinkled her nose. You're right. Everything about this place screams suburban mediocrity. She gestured expansively at the room. Those old landscape paintings and that worn leather armchair need to go. Daniel offered. I know an excellent interior designer. She redesigned my downtown condo. Very exclusive and cutting edge, though the waiting list is long. He shrugged, showing off the perfect cut of his shirt. Perfect. Victoria suddenly sat up, energetic. We could start planning tonight. I want everything different by the time we return from our trip. Daniel raised an eyebrow. A honeymoon abroad. Silly. Victoria's laugh tinkled like wind chimes. Once the divorce was final, she continued, we could get married in an exotic locale. Just us, the ocean, and maybe 50 of our closest friends. Daniel's face briefly showed concern before he masked it. You've planned it all, haven't you? Of course, I've had months to think about it, she replied. She moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows. We'll need to renovate the master bathroom first. Italian marble and a freestanding tub, perhaps. She trailed off as a large white truck turned onto their street. Daniel joined her at the window, his reflection overlapping hers in the glass. Expecting a delivery? She asked. No, he replied. Elite Moving Services are here for the new owners. Victoria frowned as the truck pulled up in front of the house. The doorbell rang, its chime cutting through the champagne haze. Victoria checked her reflection before opening the door. 2 men in moving uniforms stood there. The taller one, named Mike, consulted a clipboard. Good evening, ma'am. Elite Moving Services is here. We are scheduled for a 6:30 appointment. There must be a mistake, Victoria said. We didn't schedule any movers. Mike checked his paperwork. 123 Maple Drive. We have authorization from the new owners to begin clearing the property tonight. New owners. Daniel appeared behind Victoria, arms around her waist. What exactly are you talking about? The second mover produced a thick folder. According to our documentation, this property was sold last month. We are here to remove all furniture and belongings for the new owners who take possession on Monday. Victoria's champagne glass slipped, shattering on the porch. That's impossible. This is my house. Our paperwork shows the sale was finalized 3 weeks ago, Victoria exclaimed. Mike opened the folder to reveal official documents, all properly notarized and signed by Thomas Marshall. Thomas. Victoria's voice trembled. No, it cannot be. Daniel said, call Mark. He would know if anything was filed. Daniel pulled out his phone. Mark, I need you to check something for 123 Maple Drive. Mark replied, it is sold. Daniel's face darkened as he listened. He did what? Victoria grabbed the phone. Mark, this is Victoria Marshall. That sale can't be legal. I never signed anything. Mark explained. The house was solely in Thomas's name. He had full authority to sell it. The paperwork was ironclad, Mark continued. I handled the sale myself, but we bought it together. Victoria protested, her free hand clenching into a fist. According to records, Thomas refinanced 6 months ago, transferring it solely to his name. Your signatures are on those documents, too. Victoria's face went pale as memories crashed through her haze. She recalled a stack of papers Thomas had brought home about better interest rates. Distracted, she had signed without reading. The movers already began their work. Their movements were efficient and practiced. Ma'am, we need to begin. We have a strict schedule to keep. Get out. Victoria screamed, her composure shattered. All of you, get out. Daniel, do something. She cried, but Daniel was frozen, staring at his phone. Victoria, his voice lost its smooth confidence. He held up his phone showing an email. All my cards are being declined. Every single one. What? Victoria ran to her purse, fumbling for her wallet. Her hands shook as she tried her cards. No, everything is frozen. Our joint accounts, my credit cards, all of it, she said. The movers continued their work, efficiently beginning with the dining room, carefully wrapping an antique china cabinet passed down through generations. Those are my things, she protested, moving to stop them. But Daniel caught her arm firmly. Victoria, we need to talk now. What exactly did you say about your financial situation? She turned to him, mascara smearing at the corners of her eyes. What? You said this was your house, that when we married, it would be ours. Daniel's fingers dug deeper. You said you had assets and security. That Thomas was just building on your success. Was that all a lie? Victoria pulled away, stumbling slightly. Thomas wouldn't do this. He's just trying to scare us. He's not capable of such actions. Daniel's laugh was harsh. You're a boring, predictable husband. He sold the house weeks ago, while you thought you were so clever with your affair. Victoria's phone buzzed with a message from Thomas. Check your email. With trembling fingers, she opened her inbox. The message bore his professional signature. Victoria, you have met the moving team. They have full authorization to clear the house. The sale was finalized 3 weeks ago. He continued, the new owners take possession on Monday. All joint accounts have been closed. Utilities will be disconnected first thing Monday. I have arranged for the locks to be changed once the movers finish, and you will be served divorce papers tomorrow morning. My lawyer will contact you with the details. Victoria gasped, Oh God. She tried to sit on the couch, but it was already gone, carried out by the efficient moving team. Daniel read the email on his phone, his face darkening. You told me you were the primary breadwinner, that Thomas was just a mid-level accountant who got lucky. That is who he was. Victoria's voice rose hysterically. I don't understand how he did this. Daniel stated, because according to Mark, your husband is the founding partner at Marshall and Associates. The firm is named after him, Victoria. He is worth millions. Victoria stared, 12 years of assumptions crumbling. I thought he always seemed so ordinary, so boring with his spreadsheets and late nights at the office. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? I've been bragging about my rich new life. Victoria reached for him, but he never mentioned. Daniel stepped back as if her touch might burn. We can figure this out. We'll get lawyers and fight this. Fight with what money? Daniel gestured around the increasingly empty house. Your cards are dead, and I am not liquid right now. I just signed a lease on a new office space. The movers worked around them in a choreographed dance of efficiency. Victoria watched helplessly as they carried her clothes, her jewelry, even a small safe Thomas thought she never knew about. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? She cried. Daniel grabbed his keys from the counter, the only remaining surface. I need to do damage control. My reputation in the financial industry is worth more than this. Whatever this is, you're leaving." Victoria's voice cracked, just like that. Daniel straightened his tie, his earlier smugness replaced by cold fury. "You know what the worst part is. Thomas played us both. He let us believe we had won, and we fell for it." Victoria followed him to the door, her bare feet cold on the hardwood. "Daniel, please. I love you." Daniel's face turned to stone. "No, Victoria. You loved what you thought I represented. The excitement, the drama, the fantasy of a better life. But my fantasy was your money, money you never actually had. So this is goodbye." His car started and drove away. Victoria stood in the doorway, watching as the moving trucks began pulling away, carrying everything she owned to an unknown destination. Mike, the head mover, approached her with a clipboard. "Ma'am, please sign here confirming removal of all items listed in the inventory." Victoria stared at the paper. The itemized list ran for pages. Every piece of furniture, artwork, and clothing was categorized and numbered. Thomas had thought of everything. Her phone buzzed one final time with a message from Thomas. "The new owners are a lovely young couple. Please do not damage anything on your way out." Victoria sank to the floor of the empty foyer, her designer dress collecting dust. All her carefully laid plans, secrets, and lies had crumbled in less than 2 hours. Meanwhile, Thomas sat in his new apartment, watching the security camera feed on his laptop. He had installed the cameras months ago, disguised as smoke detectors. Now they gave him a front-row seat to justice being served. His phone lit up with a message from his lawyer. "Everything is proceeding exactly as planned. Divorce papers will be served tomorrow morning." Another message came from the investigator. "Surveillance confirms Cooper left the premises heading downtown. Victoria remains at the house. No signs of violence or property damage." Thomas closed his laptop and turned off the security feed. He felt no joy in Victoria's tears, no satisfaction in Daniel's angry departure, only a deep, quiet certainty that justice had been served. He walked to his new apartment window and looked out at the city lights, higher and clearer than before. Tomorrow would bring more fallout, but tonight he had won, not with shouting or threats, but with careful planning and methodical execution. He had given Victoria exactly what she wanted: freedom to be with Daniel, at a price she had not expected to pay. His phone rang. It was Rebecca. "Thomas, everything went perfectly. The movers confirmed completion of the removal. Do you want to proceed with the divorce filing first thing tomorrow?" "Yes," he replied steadily. "Have the papers served at the designated hour and ensure the courier records everything." Rebecca's voice was satisfied. "In my years practicing family law, I have never seen anyone handle infidelity with such precision. Precision is everything." Thomas thought of all the nights spent planning and allowed himself a sip of his fine scotch. It was not the cheap blend Victoria always bought him for Christmas. The special bottle he kept hidden in his office provided a smoky flavor that reminded him the next phase of Victoria's reality was imminent. The divorce papers would detail everything: the evidence of her affair, the documentation of her financial deceptions, and witness statements from the investigator. She would learn exactly how long he had known and how carefully he had planned. But that was for tomorrow. Tonight, Thomas raised his glass to the city lights in a silent toast to the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. He had lost a wife, but he had kept his dignity. And that was worth more than all the assets he had protected. Thomas turned away from the window. He had work to do. A major merger was closing soon. Unlike some, he believed in earning his success. The first rays of dawn crept through the empty windows, casting long shadows across the bare floors. Victoria sat in the corner of what had been their living room. Her once elegant black dress was now wrinkled and stained. The house felt alien without furniture, every footstep echoing. Her phone chimed with another message from her mother. "Victoria, answer me this instantly. The whole country club is talking about what you did to Thomas. Your father can barely show his face at the golf course. How could you throw away a marriage for a fortune hunter? Her thumb hovered over the delete button before she dropped the phone. It skittered across the wood, joining a pile of unanswered messages. Her head throbbed from champagne and crying. The sound of a car pulling up made her scramble to her feet. Through the front window, she saw a courier step out of a black sedan with a thick envelope. A small camera was clipped to his lapel, its red light blinking steadily. The doorbell rang exactly at the appointed hour. Victoria took a deep breath, summoning her old poise as she opened the door. "Victoria Marshall," the courier said with a neutral smile. He extended a clipboard. "I have documents for you from a law office." Her hand trembled as she signed the receipt. The envelope felt impossibly heavy, cool, and official against her fingers. "Ma'am, please verify the contents before I leave." Victoria tore open the envelope. Inside was a stack of documents, each meticulously prepared. The first page bore the heading "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage," followed by a detailed table of contents listing exhibits with photographic evidence, financial records, investigator reports, phone records, witness statements, and property sale documentation. Everything appeared in order. The courier, still recording, said, "Please initial here." Victoria flipped through the pages with growing horror. Photographs of her and Daniel in compromising situations, bank statements, detailed logs of secret meetings. "How?" she whispered. The courier replied, "I just deliver the papers, Mom." His eyes held a hint of judgment. "Will you acknowledge receipt of all items listed?" Victoria initialed mechanically, her signature a pale imitation of her usual confident flourish. As soon as the courier left, Victoria sank to the floor, spreading the papers in a circle. Her phone buzzed again. "Sarah, I just heard from Michael about what happened. How could you do this to Thomas? He loved you. Don't expect my support." Another message followed. "You're off the hospital board. Emergency meeting this morning. Reputation matters. Vicky." Victoria's hand clenched around the phone. Every notification brought a new rejection, another piece of her carefully constructed social world crumbling. She scrolled through her contacts, growing more desperate. Everyone either sent her straight to voicemail or criticized her behavior. The sound of tires on pavement made her look up. Through the window, she saw Daniel's red sports car pulling into the driveway. Her heart leaped, then plummeted when she noticed he was not alone. A woman sat in the passenger seat, her posture exuding elegant disdain. Victoria yanked open the door, not caring about her appearance. "Daniel," she called as she hurried down the steps. Daniel stepped out slowly, his movements lacking their usual grace. The woman remained in the car, watching with interest. "What are you doing here?" "I'm getting my things," Daniel replied. "I left my laptop and some files yesterday." "Your things?" Victoria's laugh trembled with hysteria. "Everything's gone. Thomas had it all moved out while you ran away like a coward." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I didn't run away. I made a strategic retreat to cut my losses. I've already explained everything to Jessica. She understands this was a terrible mistake." "Jessica?" Victoria whispered. "My fiancée." Daniel adjusted his tie. "Well, ex-fiancée. Soon to be fiancée again, I hope, once I convince her this whole mess was temporary insanity." The words hit Victoria like blows. "You were engaged this whole time." Daniel confirmed, and Jessica stepped out of the car, her heels clicking on the pavement. She was younger than Victoria had expected, her dark hair swept into an elegant chignon. "I didn't know," Victoria whispered. "He never mentioned her," Daniel replied curtly. Jessica's smile was sharp. "Daniel has a habit of forgetting important details when chasing what he thinks is a better opportunity. Don't you, darling?" Daniel flinched. Jessica continued, "Thank you, by the way, for the wake-up call. Daniel is not half as clever as he thinks." Victoria watched as Daniel searched the empty house for his belongings, with Jessica following like an amused observer. Their voices echoed through the bare rooms. "Is this the wealthy lifestyle you wanted?" Jessica asked sarcastically. Victoria blocked their path to the car, summoning the last shreds of dignity. "So that's it. Everything you said to me was a lie," she demanded, her voice raw. "Not everything," Daniel shrugged. "The intimacy was good, but the promises were merely aspirational." Jessica laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Oh, Daniel, still trying to sound clever." She turned to Victoria with practiced concern. "A word of advice. Next time you decide to have an affair, do your homework. Daniel has a reputation for latching onto wealthy women during his breaks." Victoria said quietly, "There won't be a next time." Jessica replied sharply, "You still have your delusions. Come along, Daniel. We have counseling scheduled, and I have many trust issues to discuss." Victoria watched as they drove away, another piece of her world crumbling to dust. She returned to the empty house, where the divorce papers lay scattered on the floor, a testament to her own blindness. Picking them up, she began to read. Thomas had included a personal letter in his precise handwriting, as familiar as her own reflection. "Victoria, I won't waste words on how I discovered your affair. The evidence speaks for itself. I documented every late-night call, secret meeting, and lie while you planned your new life with Daniel." He continued, "I planned the house sale, asset transfers, and account closures to ensure you experienced the same shock and betrayal you inflicted on me. You thought I was boring and predictable, but those qualities allowed me to dismantle your house of lies." He added, "I do not hate you. Hatred requires an emotional investment I can no longer afford. Instead, I give you the freedom you desire. The divorce settlement is fair and firm, nothing more. Do not contest it. Your belongings have been placed in storage. The access code is your birthday, something Daniel never bothered to learn. Goodbye, Victoria." The letter ended. Victoria sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the weight of her choices. Outside, a moving truck pulled up. The new owners had begun their move-in process. Through tear-blurred eyes, she watched a young couple emerge from a sensible car, their faces bright with excitement. Her phone buzzed one final time. A message from Thomas's lawyer read, "You have until noon to vacate the premises. Please ensure you take nothing that is not personally yours. The new owners will contact law enforcement if necessary." Across town, Thomas sat in his corner office at Marshall & Associates, reviewing documents for the Thompson merger. The city sprawled below him, a testament to the empire he had built, while Victoria thought he was merely pushing papers. His phone lit up with a message from Rebecca. Divorce papers served and documented. Victoria received them promptly. Daniel Cooper appeared with his fiancée. Everything was recorded. Thomas replied, "No need. File everything as discussed. Let me know when she's cleared out." He turned back to his work, but his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Marshall, Mrs. Chun is here to see you." Sarah sent her in. Rebecca entered with a tablet and a gleam in her eye. "I know you said no footage, but you should see this. Daniel Cooper's fiancée gave quite a performance. Oscar-worthy. Really." Thomas held up his hand firmly. "It is done, Rebecca. I do not need to see her humiliation. You're a better person than most clients," Rebecca said as she sat with a new stack of papers. "These need your signature, and the divorce will be final in 90 days. Thomas signed each page methodically. Every signature felt like another brick in the wall between his past and future. "Make sure Victoria's storage fees are paid for 3 months. After that, it is up to her generosity. I want clean closure, no loose ends." Rebecca gathered the papers and tucked them into her briefcase. "Well, I would say mission accomplished. She's lost everything. House, money, reputation." Thomas straightened a pen on his desk, grounding himself. "I do not feel anything." He continued, "She wanted excitement and drama, a more interesting life. I gave her exactly that. And now, I have work to do." Thomas turned back to his computer screen. The Thompson merger would not close itself. After Rebecca left, Thomas allowed himself one moment of reflection. He opened his desk drawer and removed the wedding photo from his old office. The silver frame caught the morning light, reflecting a moment that now belonged to someone else. Without hesitation, he dropped it into the shredder. The photo disappeared strip by strip. 12 years of marriage reduced to confetti. Thomas did not watch. He had already moved on. His phone buzzed one final time. A message from the new homeowners. The message read, "House is empty. Keys received. Thank you for making this so smooth. We cannot wait to make it our home." Thomas smiled slightly, a look of acknowledgement rather than joy. In the end, it had not been about revenge. It was about justice delivered with the precision and attention to detail he brought to everything. Victoria had chosen drama over loyalty and excitement over commitment, and he had shown her that sometimes the most devastating moves come from those underestimated. He turned back to his work, already focused on the future. The past was filed away, categorized and closed. Just another successfully executed plan in a life built on careful preparation. Outside his office, the city stretched with new possibilities. The morning sun caught the glass of surrounding buildings, turning them into mirrors of clear skies. He had lost a wife but kept his dignity. In business, as in life, that was the only currency that truly mattered. Sarah's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Marshall, the Thompson team is ready for your call." Thomas thanked Sarah, straightened his tie, and turned back to his computer. Life moved forward, one carefully planned step at a time. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.